You know, I don't think the Wii is appreciated quite as much as it should be, considering how big of a splash it made upon its release in the tail end of 2006. You'd think it'd have a more vocal following, but that's not the case, and that's surprising to me. As the system that brought motion controls from pipe dream to reality with so little as a pack-in disc, the system that, for better or worse, put casual gaming on the map, the system that inspired the retro revival via the Virtual Console and WiiWare, nobody could ever have guessed just how much Nintendo's understated little white brick would revolutionize gaming. However, Nintendo's offering to the 7th generation of home consoles did have its shortcomings, such as underpowered hardware and rampant publishing of shovelware, but one of the most notable was its reputation as a kiddie console, only exacerbated by a major lack of mature offerings. The console had heaps of family-friendly titles to choose from, yes, but even now you're really limited for choice if you want something with more bite to it. Ubisoft's Red Steel may have proved the concept's viability, and the likes of Mad World, Manhunt 2 and Silent Hill would eventually come to try and stake their claim to the niche as well, but 2008's No More Heroes was one of the first big mature releases on the system, and one of the most fondly remembered to this day. Directed by Japanese video game auteur Suda51 and developed by his studio Grasshopper Manufacturer, NMH follows Travis Touchdown, a weeaboo Johnny Knoxville lookalike with an eBay-bought lightsaber who gets roped into a series of deadly ranked fights against strange and vicious assassins on a quest to become the USA's #1 ranked assassin, and maybe even hook up with the girl organising his fights as a bonus. The frankness and straightforward nature of this title's plotline provides a breath of fresh air from Suda51's previous release Killer 7, focusing more on memorable and engaging characters, fun set pieces and crude jokes over thematic subtleties or geopolitical tensions. While I could probably write a whole 10+ minute video on any member of the Smith Syndicate, Travis is just a guy who lives alone in a motel with his cat, is a fan of cutesy magical girl anime, and can't return the porn tapes he rents on time. His background is almost non-existent, he says what's on his mind, and his motivations are simple. It's even spelt out by the guy himself in the opening FMV.
I want to be #1. How's that? Short and simple enough for you?
Almost as a call-out to the people who couldn't follow Killer 7's batshit insanity. Things do become a little more complicated towards the end of your playthrough, with the legitimacy of the battles being called into question, a mysterious deuteragonist throwing himself in your business, and the return of a long-lost blood relative from Travis's past coming back to haunt him. You can tell this is from the Killer 7 guy. It's obvious from the high-contrast shadows, cell shading, obsession with assassins, and presence of a major character named Travis. But in practice, NMH is a very different beast. As previously mentioned, the top 10 ranked assassins stand between Travis and their sweet #1 spot, and the main bulk of the game revolves around high-octane hack-and-slash action, where you enter their domains, wade your way through an army of their goons, visit the restroom, and take them out in a climactic boss fight. Given some of the heat these guys are packing, you of course have a weapon to defend yourself in the form of a beam katana, which can be best described as a ghetto lightsaber. This is swung with a simple press of the A button on the Wii remote, and whether said remote is pointed up or down determines whether these attacks go high or low. Once an enemy's down for the count, a prompt will urge you to swing the remote yourself in a certain direction for the finishing blow, and occasionally you'll have to do the same with both the remote and nunchuck when enemies are stunned to perform suplexes, or shake it like a madman to recharge the battery in a rather lewd manner, but movement, locking on, and the melee attacks are all handled with button presses, and for the majority of the playtime this is about as far as motion controls go. And thank God for that. I'd fathom combat would be a lot worse if they embraced the waggle too openly, because each of the main stages consists of a good 20 minutes or so of running around facing off against regular mooks, and I'm not the kind of person who is good at or enjoys waving my arms every which way for that length of time. However, the character action portions aren't all that fills this title's 10 to 15 hour runtime. Santa Destroy itself serves as a supposedly open world for you to, in theory, explore on your motorcycle, the Spelltiger. You might ask why I'm making that statement so hypothetical, and that would be because of how little there is to do in what's supposed to be an entire city. Civilians wander about aimlessly with only the bare minimum in interactivity or AI, your vehicle doesn't sustain any damage no matter how many times you crash, there's no enemies to impede your progress or obstacles to avoid, and all of this combined with a lack of many significant landmarks makes Santa Destroy dull and unmemorable. To make it clear, I'm hardly expecting Grand Theft Auto tier open world design, but aside from the 50 Lokikov balls scattered around the map, and dumpsters full of t-shirts or money, there's absolutely nothing to be gained from exploring this city, and by the second half of the game, running around it starts to feel more and more like padding. Thankfully, the part-time jobs are a little bit more fun, as each of the UAA's challenges comes with a steep entry fee and Travis is a broke loser, you'll need to grind for money between each one of them. Of course, there are a few smaller assassination gigs which will test your skills from the main game, but those require an invitation ticket, and before you can get that, you'll need to get yourself down to the job center and bust ass picking up coconuts, mowing lawns, pumping gas, or even cleaning litter from the streets. The soundtrack has its ups and downs. A fairly simple leitmotif of the main theme is reprised across almost every song in the soundtrack, and while the bluesy riff is tense yet confident and catchy enough for you to find yourself whistling it in your daily life, I can imagine that if this doesn't gel with you for whatever reason, you'll start to get sick of it, especially during songs like Kashmir Cannonball, which incorporate it with little variation through their entire runtime. Notably though, it runs the gamut of genres over the course of your adventure, jumping in and out of blues, metal, dance, chiptune and more to make sure things don't get too repetitive, and nowhere is this more plain to see than in the boss fights. Every single ranked fight has a total jam to go with it, from the bouncy pop beat of Pleather for Breakfast corrupted by dirty guitar riffs and distorted female vocals, all the way to the soaring synth undertones pitted against the ringing metallic clockwork rhythm of Stop Hanging DJs. NMH soundtrack and diversity is one of its most standout features that it has to offer, but when it comes to graphics, I'm honestly not sure whether to commend or berate the way things look. The frame rate is hilariously unstable, character models are chunky and jagged, certain textures look muddy and smudged, and the distance-based level of detail swapping is so abrupt and exaggerated that untextured cubes in the overworld turn into fully textured buildings in the blink of an eye. Yes, Travis, your shades do look cool, but you are clearly extremely short-sighted and you need to swap them out for prescription lenses before you crash that motorcycle into a goddamn river. And yet, despite all of those objective weaknesses, No More Heroes still looks damn good to me. Between the 8-bit punk rock hybrid aesthetic, the screen print loading transitions, iconic character designs, harsh high contrast cell shading, and every single visual flourish, this game is stylish as hell, and manages to squeeze more charm into the save screen alone than many other releases get from an entire 20+ hour run through. This isn't quite Persona 5 levels of UI mastery, but it's still a case where every visual flaw is balanced out with enough style that you don't mind it. And that, I suppose, is how I feel in general about No More Heroes. While No More Heroes 2 Desperate Struggle would go on to up the ante in almost every single way, that's definitely not to say the original isn't worth a play. By no means is it perfect, not even close, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a fantastic time. Despite how tired I got of driving around the map, despite the frame rate drops, and despite me being absolutely terrible at the free fights. Seriously, these are ridiculous. Still not gonna cheat though. Each boss fight is more imaginative than the last, every single character is memorable, the cutscenes are a joy, and combat is immensely satisfying to the last strike. This is the premier mature game for the Wii, and the best part is that it uses the Wii's motion control gimmick to its advantage, not its detriment. And hey, even if the Wii controls don't gel with you, there's always the Heroes Paradise port for PS3 that lets you play with a standard controller. Either way, No More Heroes is a gem in the crown of either system, and absolutely worth a pickup if you're in the mood for some high-octane, punk rock, lucha swordplay action.
It's Killer